following program is a presentation of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio in iTunes.
And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market. From unusual activity alerts to market updates and trading strategies. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block. With your host, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com and co-hosts Mike Tusaw from KnowYourOptionsInc.com and Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. The Option Block is brought to you by Options Express. Don't spend time worrying about your broker. At Options Express, security, stability, and account protection are the most important responsibilities to our customers. Secure account access, enhanced financial protection, entrusted with over $7 billion in customer assets, established financial stability. Options Express lets you trade with confidence. Stocks, options, and futures, all in one account. Trade with a specialist. Visit optionsexpress.com/OXradio to open your free account. Options Express is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
Welcome back to the Option Block, your bi-weekly source of options, wit, wisdom, and occasionally, at least we like to think, hilarity. My name is Mark Longo from the old OptionsInsider.com, as well as the Options Insider Radio Network. And for those of you Twitter fans, you can also hit me up on twitter.com/options, or of course you can always find us as well on Facebook, facebook.com/optionsinsider. You can send us questions for the show there. Anything else you'd like to talk about, by all means, surf on over to those venues. And you can reach us as well as always posting in our forum for this show. Just surf on over to the optionsinsider.com/forum and scroll on down to the listener questions for Option Block segment, and you can post your questions there. So a lot of ways to get in touch with us here at the old Option Block. And joining me on the all-star panel today, we have a rogues gallery of contributors, starting off with the man from Maine, Mr. Lobster himself, one Andrew Giovinazzi of Option Pit fame. Mr. Giovinazzi, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. The Option Lobster's thrilled. I've never been introduced first on the show before.
Uh-oh, you're moving up in the world, sir.
I'm always like third. I'm the third lobster. They eat the first two lobsters and then they eat me.
That's
everything is well in Maine. Spring is springing.
Spring has sprung. Good to hear.
Market funky, but spring is springing.
I think, Andrew, being from Maine, you should be the Options Maniac.
The Options Maniac?
Yeah, spelled the state of Maine, yak.
Yeah, the Maniacs actually are the, and I know this because my kid plays hockey, the Maniacs are the Lewiston Auburn semi-professional hockey team.
Gotcha.
I don't want anybody to get confused because somebody might throw a puck at my head walking down the street, but yes.
You got the people from Massachusetts are the massholes. And then the people from Connecticut are the Canidiots.
Watch your tongue there, sir. I hail from the Nutmeg State.
I know.
Yes, and also joining us on the old all-star panel today is Mr. FHM himself. Unfortunately, there were no federal holidays for him to take off today, so he was forced to join us on the program. Good old Mike Cavanaugh from Know Your Options Inc. Mr. FHM, welcome back to the show.
I was. It's great to be back. I was lobbying for another federal holiday, and my lobbying efforts were not completed successfully. So I'm here today.
I don't know if they recognize Arbor Day in the financial markets.
I'm looking for Underwater Basket Weaver Day.
That's a growing force. I hear that's the fastest growing
of our population.
Fastest growing basket sport in the world right now. From 1 to 2, that's a huge jump. Last but certainly not least, we have the man holding down the OX hot seat, none other than Mr. Grigas, Mr. John Grigas himself from Options Express. Mr. Grigas, welcome back to the show, sir.
Yeah, good to be here. I had last Monday off. Mike sent me an email, said it was a holiday, so I didn't show up. He's a funny guy. Was it Emancipation Day or the 16th, something like that? No, but it's good to be back here. Markets are down, so I'm ready to get into it and see what happened.
And since I plugged our Twitter here at the top of the show, I would be remiss if I didn't plug everyone else's as well. I believe, Mr. Kavanaugh, you guys are no underscore options. Is that correct?
I think it's just no options.
Oh, just no options. KNOW options. And you boys over at the Pit, you can find them at Option Pit. And are you guys at Options Express, John, for Twitter? Do you know?
We own it. I don't think we're broadcasting anything.
Okay, you just have it locked down, just like Andrew has Option Lobster locked down, just in case he wants to jump on that down the road a little bit.
Yeah, but we're not currently
tweets.
tweeting.
Yes, but certainly check out those. And, of course, if you want to learn more about OX or anything we talk about on this show here, or maybe you want to kick the tires for an OX account for yourself, then by all means, surf on over to optionsexpress.com/OX radio. You can find a nice little special offer there that Mr. Grigas has put out for you, all you people looking to try and kick the tires over there at OX. So check it out, optionsexpress.com/OX radio. And now we're going to dive right into the trading block.
The trading block.
All right, and welcome to the trading block. This is, of course, the portion of the show where we run down what was trading today. And as Mr. Grigas alluded to earlier, this was a bit of a down day on the old street. Looks like the most of the blood was in the NASDAQ, coming from everyone's favorite fruit company, good old Apple, down 19 handles or 3% today to close around 584. That, of course, brought the Apple Plus, a.k.a. the NASDAQ, down 0.7% or nearly 23 handles to close at 3,046. S&P only off about 0.4% to 1398. And the Dow down about 14 handles or 0.1% to 13,213. So a lot of red, but not a ton, except in Apple land. So maybe we'll start there. Since you boys are the big Apple devotees over there at KYO, Mr. Kavanaugh, what was going on in Apple land that knocked it off its tree today?
It's funny you mentioned that the NASDAQ is like Apple Plus. I mean, that's really what it is, and
that's totally what it is.
Want to trade the watered down index?
Doesn't that overstate the NASDAQ?
Right. You just trade Apple. I mean, it's not a stock anymore. It just seems like an index. And I didn't see any news. I mean, we're just plugging along. We're still long our base shares of the stock. We've got it hedged. It's not overly sexy, but it's been working.
You guys are hedged down at 560 again?
We actually are hedged right now. We're in the June 530 put. And we're short the we're short the July 650 calls.
A wee bit of a bearish outlook, rolling down a bit.
Rolled it down a little bit just to help pay for the cost of the puts. That got us the ability to get a little further away. We're not the smartest trees in the drawer, so to speak. You know, it's been great. There's a lot of volatility in it, so we were able to get pretty far away without a huge cost, and we picked up a good chunk of premium on the 650 calls for July, so we were able to cheat away a little further on the puts.
Yeah, if you're not collaring that stuff off, that gets pretty pricey pretty quick to continually roll those puts out there in Apple. You're talking many handles being given up to the old premium gods for that downside.
Yeah. Well, it gets pricey, and then it's like we're very transparent, so that the portfolios that we're trading are tailored to meet the individual's needs, and it's almost like we're behavioral therapists. When we've been in a position this long, the natural reaction is, why are we buying puts? We keep losing all this money on these puts. Why are we buying puts? And if we take the puts off, I'll call everybody in the world. We should have a blog that says the puts are off because Kavanaugh lost the battle of telling people the importance of having puts. Murphy's Law. This thing's going to have a day at one point where it comes down, and it'll be after you're like, oh, I wish I would have just kept the puts on. So, I mean, we always have the puts on in the collar because you never know when that day is coming, like the flash crash. I mean, it's hard to argue, hey, why do we keep buying puts when you keep losing money on the puts? But at some point, there's going to be that day where it's, well, now I see why we bought the puts. And because we've lost money on the puts the whole way up, if we lose the money on the underlying without the put protection, then it was all for naught. So
yeah, at this point now when it's so top heavy, it'd be a shame not to have that. You had it all the way up. It'd be a shame not to have it on the way down. And speaking of the way down, this thing keeps moving 20 handles at a clip. 530 isn't that far off.
Well, it's moving 20 handles in both directions.
Yeah, that's true.
And I just got a note here from the Maniac Lobster Trader, stay the course. It is. I mean, that's it. That is the message. Stay the course. If you've collared Apple for this long, stay the course. Absolutely.
Yes. No bailing. You can't bail now. You're in too deep.
The terrorists will win if we bail on puts on Apple.
That's right.
A little political
commentary.
commentary.
The worst thing is everybody's upset that they're making money. No, don't make me make any more money. Option Express, KYO guys, I can't handle it. No, stop
making me risk-adjusted returns that are blowing away the S&P. Okay.
Stop it. I can't take it anymore.
Speaking of OX, John, were you guys fielding a lot of calls? I know whenever Apple has a 3% or so move day, it seems like it's a busy day for you guys. Was this the topic du jour on the desk today, or were customers into other topics?
I mean, it pretty much is every other day. There's either a big move in Apple or there's some type of news, and you can just listen to the first 20 minutes of the day and hear Apple and everyone's conversation. Don't really see any direction though. People really are. They're just kind of in what they have and they're not adding to it. A little bit of concern in their voices since we had such good earnings and we were up 57 handles that day, and now we're where do we close that day before earnings? 655.
Yeah, 60.
Sorry, 555.
60, right?
It was about 560. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it seems like it's going to test, its move or where we ended that day. But no, definitely hearing a lot of calls. Like I said, people really not managing, not rolling out. They're just kind of going, why are we going down? Because they don't, the stock has only done one thing in 3 years. Their concern is what news are we hearing? And like I said, there really isn't much out there other than maybe a little profit taking.
Speaking of profit taking, we're all holding our breath right now for the announcement from Denny's. Truly a market mover in every shape of the word, coming out after the bell today. Closed at $4.14, and everyone's hoping that Denny's will light up the tape and end the red for all of us. At the very least.
There wasn't much on the earnings calendar that I was looking at. I mean, a lot of earnings coming out today, but nothing really good.
Yeah.
So I figure at the best we could all tell our best, high school Denny story, but
Hey, maybe they'll announce they're slashing prices on Moons over Miami, and then Denny's will be off to the races, trading $10 at least at that point. But yes, and speaking of down days, NYSE Euronext also coming out with their earnings before the bell this morning and not looking particularly strong in the old exchange sector. I'm sure a lot of this has to do probably with down 5% to about 25 3/4. A lot of this has to do with probably some resulting write-downs from all that the aborted merger they were about to undergo this year. They got shut down by the regulators, so I'm sure that didn't exactly help their numbers going forward. Andrew, what were you watching on a vol sense? Looks like we saw the weekend creeping back in and a little bit of Apple uncertainty creeping back into the old VIX as well.
Yeah, a couple of things. I actually thought because the move was Apple was it was pretty solid. The little Apple VIX was up like one and what is that? What was the number today? It was actually had a pretty good move. Post earnings, it was up $1.73. The VXAPL, that's the Apple VIX. So a post earnings move up or a post earnings vol move up in Apple. Perish the thought. So that was worthwhile. I think Apple's volatility is probably fairly priced at 35 right now because the underlying is moving so much. At least. So it's a tough one probably to get too crazy selling juice in. But I was surprised by how well the market held up overall, with Spain. Okay, Spain, here's a surprise. They had a recessionary quarter or their GDP dropped. They stopped spending money, like they turned the faucet off. Why is this a surprise to anybody? Spend less money, they have to restructure. So I think the market shook most of that off. Looking at the TLT again today, defying gravity, still below 2% yields, So I watched all that kind of trade up in the morning, and it spent all day just sort of coming back. So and overall that's pretty healthy. I think Apple's just people taking some money. And any big fund that decides to sell, they have such a huge gain in it, it's going to drop the thing back. I mean, Apple's been doing this down 20, up 20 thing for probably 3 weeks now. So I don't think it's a surprise, but it just, it happens. But vol-wise, yeah, weekend comes, the volatility comes back in after the weekend. So nothing new on the vol front. Overall, though, implied volatility in the VIX options has come way off. It came way off last week. And my sense is that the private market is starting to fund the Eurobond stuff, as opposed to just the Euro banks buying it all and doing the easy role play. So I think those things are good overall, and the Euro news becomes less and less interesting as long as people are still willing to buy their bonds. They're not going to do it for 5, but it looks like they'll do it for 6. And they keep doing the tough work of cutting spending, and our volatility will tick down. I think earnings were good. I think earnings everywhere were good.
Yeah, I can't imagine the Spanish news being too much of a surprise to anyone at this point. I mean, how long have we been listening to dire pronouncements and dire headlines rolling out of one Eurozone state after another? It's just, it's an endless stream. Yeah. So, yet, I mean, Spain, it's not exactly like Spain wasn't on anyone's radar going into this.
Yeah.
Oh, what a surprise. Spain is having financial issues?
It'll really knock people over and says, okay, it'll only take 3 days to open a business in Spain instead of 4 months, And people will be like, whoa, that really is news. I want to open I want to sell some wine on the street corner. It takes 4 months to get a wine license. Just so they'll figure it out eventually, once people start throwing rocks through windows. And they're pretty much there now. But yeah, the crazy thing, I think, really energy too, I think held the market up. I think that was the other kind of piece of the puzzle. Have that little buyout. These pipeline gas producers are starting to own the world. And I think that held things up considerably. Natural gas has stopped doing its. I follow that pretty carefully for various selfish reasons. And it's bounced hard off of $15. So I think energy held up the other piece of the market, and that's a big chunk. So one day the text gets sold off, but the next day the energy helps it up. So on balance, it kind of dulls the sort of volatility factor.
It's funny, I'm just looking through the earnings calendar as we're talking for tonight, and Mr. Grigos is right. It is a bunch of garbage tonight, announcing nothing of much interest. Denny's is indeed the leader of the pack among there. Of course, we were talking last week on the show, Uncle Mike and I anyway, about the other big holding of KYO, which is Ford, one he and I often like to play around with. And it looks like we were toying with the idea of whether we should sell some premium on the 12 strike. And it looks like we missed our opportunity because Ford is substantially lower since earnings, trading at about $11.30 today, down about 30 cents or about 2% today, and down a bit since earnings as well. So Ford not exactly looking super bright post earnings. Looks like we're in just this kind of wait and see period for a lot of these names post earnings. A lot of interesting stuff unfolding, or should I say maybe yet to come in the old earnings cycle. Anything else you guys were watching before I dive right into the old odd block?
I just have a question about Denny's earnings. If they don't get the call done in a half an hour, do we get a free Moons over Miami? That's what I want to know.
Or is that Domino's where they bring it to you and then they bring the call to your house in 30 minutes or less? Or
I don't know. Denny's was 10
free.
minutes or less. That's right.
They bring it to your table?
10 minutes or less, or it's free. They give you a
timer.
timer.
Yeah, I've had some painful Denny's experience.
It's been so long since I've been to Denny's. I didn't even remember that they 10 minutes.
My 3 little kids think Denny's is the best invention in history. Choices of pancakes with whipped cream. How can you get any better than that?
Yes. Quality. And with that talk of quality Denny's cuisine, I think we'll close up the old trading block and dive right into the odd block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
right, that funky music means it's time once again for the old Odd Block. This is the portion of the show where I get to dive into some of the interesting and the unusual options activity that we've been profiling over at theoptionsinsider.com. If you want to learn more about these names or any others that we're talking about on the old site today, then by all means surf on over to theoptionsinsider.com. You can read detailed write-ups about all the names I'm going to talk about and more. We're going to kick things off here with another newcomer to the old Odd Block. This is Manitowoc Company, Inc., ticker symbol MTW. They closed today at $13.85, down about 80 cents or about 5.5%. And this is an industrial manufacturing company, and they're getting pounded ahead of their earnings, which are on April 3rd. Not surprisingly, given the direction we saw in the old underlying today, that people are piling into front month puts here in MTW. Looks like the bulk of the action. Well, actually, before we even dive into the action, let's look at what typically goes on in good old MTW of late. And looks like they've been fairly active going into earnings, doing about 3,000 contracts a day. I'd wager that's a high average for them. Let me check first, though. Andrew, was this in your pit back in the day?
This is a stock the Kavanaugh family holds near and dear to its heart. My parents actually live in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, where the Manitowoc Company is headquartered. This stock has been in our family since, the 1940s.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, the stock, it's a stalwart until about 4 years ago. It's a company that's never had an ounce of debt. And they bought a company in London called Enodis, Enodis. And they put on a currency hedge while the deal was going through. And the currency hedge went upside down, and they lost a couple $100 million, and that became their debt. And they had to get lean. It's a company that started building dry docks and boats. Their big claim to fame was in 1940. FDR commissioned them to make 10 submarines because they had enough welders and they could side launch a submarine into the Manitowoc River through Lake Michigan through the St. Lawrence Waterway. And they started making ice cube machines not too far after that. So if you see any kind of ice cube machines in hotels or restaurants, it's the Manitowoc Company. And when they bought their biggest overseas competitor, this Enodis, they got into some trouble with the currency hedge, and now they've had to restructure their company based on holding debt, which they've never had in their 150-year history. So the stock itself is a very conservative. It tended to go up, split, and then recently it's kind of been more rocky. And if people are buying the puts, I think it's probably to hedge whatever changes may be coming. They had to sell their marine division not too long ago, so they make Staten Island ferries, U.S. Coast Guard cutters. They make a lot of different things.
FHM apparently moonlights as the company historian here for MTW. That was quite an impressive array of information, sir.
My dad's next door neighbor is the CEO. The guy that lives across the street is the CFO. Every block party, it's you get an earful of the Manitowoc Company.
Wow.
I want to know who sold them the currency hedge.
Our friends, I believe, at the Goldman Sachs.
John Corzine Sr., right?
What a currency hedge.
I can't confirm or deny that, but it was the timing. Like September 2008 is when it got all screwballed.
Yeah, but still.
That's just crazy. Well, yeah, we saw people piling into the May 13 today. May 13 puts, picking up about 3,000 of them against open interest of just 700. Yeah, we saw about 3,100 of these May 13 puts going up against open interest of a whopping 0 here. And looks like the bulk of these are picked up for about 50 cents. Obviously, people looking to either hedge some downside against, as Uncle Mike says, continued rough times, rough waters ahead for MTW. And like we said, they have earnings coming out on the 3rd, so who knows? Perhaps they'll turn things around. Perhaps they will finally get out from under the shadow of that horrible, horrible Goldman Sachs currency hedge that seems to have turned this company on its ear. What the hell kind of hedge just annihilates your company at that point? How much are you putting on the table? That's not a hedge at that point. That's a significant, substantial speculation.
Yeah, it just feels like a hedge that was just short way too much kind of gamma. It's not probably the right shape for this company. I think that's the problem. It obviously had explosive characteristics that somebody didn't quite figure out. Well, it only happens like 1% of the time. It'll blow up in your face, and like Mike said, there you go. There's your 1% of the time, kablooey. So
yeah, this one really seems to have blown up. So yeah, I usually toss it to Andrew to see if he had some random experience with it in one of his pits, but apparently Uncle Mike is our FHM. I keep forgetting.
I can't touch
Monday
that.
Mike is the company historian for all things
72
MTW.
years of
Wow.
family knowledge
Yes.
came pouring out.
We'll have to bring MTW back on the show on a regular basis to get some updates. If you talk about it, is that considered inside information since you're so knee deep in this company?
Well, I think inside information is something that's not public. So I don't possess any non-public information about the Manitowoc Company.
Right. Like if he sees the CEO though kicking his dog, he knows that earnings cycle is not going to be good.
It's public information. Google Maps.
Exactly.
You can see
CEO on lawn kicking
CEO's
dog.
got a new Bugatti pulling into the driveway.
It's going to be a good year this year.
If he's storming off to his car with a revolver in his waistband, then maybe another Goldman Sachs
but it's got
currency
a
hedge
trunk
didn't
full
go
of
over too
cheese,
well.
So how great can it be?
All right, I hate to bring to a close our discussion of MTW. That was more edifying than I perhaps had assumed when I first threw that into the old odd block. And then we're going
to throw any Wisconsin-based manufacturing company into the loop, and there's a good chance you might get a corny story on it.
Well, we'll see what you can do here. The next one we have is Warner Chilcott Limited, ticker symbol WCRX. This is an Irish drug maker. I'm assuming, Monday, Mike, this is a little bit outside of your local purview.
Well, Irish drug maker, isn't that a beer company?
Yeah, you're right. Isn't that Guinness?
Wouldn't that be Guinness, right?
But yes, WCRX, this closed today at $21.81, up about $3 or 16%. This is the name that was all over the board today. They were just gapping like crazy. They opened today at around 22.5. They gapped down to around almost 21, and then they gapped up to a 23.25 at one point. So they were just slinging all over news that this drug maker was in talks to sell the company. And as you might imagine, that just set the options world on fire as well. This is the name that usually does about 500 contracts a day. They did over 34,000 today. And given the sizable three-handle or so range we saw in the underlying today, with a lot of strikes were active today, but a couple of big trades. We saw nearly 4,700 of the May 20 calls going up today, including a block of close to 3,000 going up there. It looks like they were sold in a spread for $1.92. I don't know what the other side of that spread was off the top of my head. I think he did some splits on some other strikes. There's so much going up today in WCRX that it's hard to parse all of it. The other big sizable trade was this June 1821 risk reversal going up here. It looks like the bulk of it went up. About a total of nearly 8,000 contracts went up on the day in both strikes, and looks like the customer bought at least 5,000, if not more. When I had written this up earlier in the day, there was only the risk reversal had only gone up 5,000 times. So it appears that they've added another 3,000 towards the end of the day, or close to it. It looks like they bought about at least 5,000 of those June 18 puts on prices that were splits for about 52.5 cents, and they sold the June 21 calls for around $2.20. So that could have gone up as many as 8,000 times today, which is just a beast of a trade. So obviously, looks like given most of the sentiment we've seen today going up in the options in WCRX, people thinking that the upper limits of this range are not going to hold. Which, like I said, seeing a lot of this one here, especially this 21-18 spread is deep in the money on the selling in the money calls, buying out of the money puts, but far out of the money puts. It's an interesting risk reversal they have going on here. Obviously, people not putting their money where their mouth is, people not thinking that WCRX can really maintain these lofty highs. I don't know who they're in talks with or anything along those lines. Like I said, we haven't jumped into the news that much, more looking at the underlying activity. And for a name, like we said, that does 500 contracts a day, it's doing that on multiple strikes today across the board. A lot of activity here in WCRX. And Mr. Andrew, was this any of your pits out in the Pecos, perhaps?
No, it wasn't. But you know what? I was looking at the volume and volatility, and you know what? It was actually trading at like 80, 90 volatility on Friday. So this was kind of I think there were some people actually trying to, I think they were trying to blow out some of their options, try to take some profits today as well, because there was some pretty serious volume over the last couple days. There was really crazy implied volatility in here. So, I mean, it was moving. This stuff, and it came in pretty hard, so I'm trying to figure out it looks like some story has changed slightly intraday, and I'm not quite sure. I'm just looking for it. But I did not trade this one on the Pecos. That's the short answer. But it feels like there is a story here yet to be written about this name. From all the
I'm just trying
implied vol action.
I'm trying to parse what was going up on Friday here while we're talking, and it looks like
we had a good pop Friday for the vol, and then I'm looking at things came off today quite a bit. That's kind of my take on it.
It's like there were about 5,000 of the May 20s went up on Friday. A lot of activity on that strike. Looks like the bulk of them were buys. Stock was moving around on Friday, obviously, as well, because these were ranging in price from 75 cents up to $1.20. So there was some activity. I don't see any big bulk
No big
buys.
prints.
Yeah, no big prints coming in saying one guy's gobbling up 5,000 at what the time would have been at the money or even upside calls ahead of this announcement. But still, yeah, people were loading up on premium on Friday. So interesting. People obviously saw something in the works here in good old WCRX.
Yeah, the thing traded 23 and change today. So, I mean,
this thing was all over the board. Mr. Grigas, you get any calls on this one today? It seemed to be one of the winners of the day today from a volume perspective anyway.
Yeah, I mean, up 16%. You said they normally do, 500 contracts?
Yeah, this is usually a non-player, and they're lighting up the tape today.
No, we didn't have any retail people. I mean, even those trades looked like it was someone big doing it. I mean, the size that went up, $5,000 on those Junes. We definitely didn't have people in retail playing it at all today, but definitely have to watch and see what happens. See if it comes back down from its rumored buyout or selling of it, I should say.
Yeah, there isn't crazy option skew. I mean, it's some, but it's not super crazy. It is a little more takeover-y shaped, I have to say. But not super. At the money's are still the cheapest options though there, in Warner Chilcott Limited. Still the cheapest options by far.
Yeah, I started parsing some of this Friday volume for size, and I started seeing some big chunks going up in these May 20s. The 760 lot for $1.20 looks like a buy. The 400 lot looks like a buy for $1.20. A 2,000 lot roughly for $1.30 looks like that's probably a buy. I hate these price variation prints they give you; they're useless. But looks like a buy on that one as well. So that looks like people were coming in to load up on some primo, saying something's happening out here in Ireland.
Now people are coming, I think, just to sell the Judy out of the premium because it's normally a 40 volatility stock, and even it's still trading around 60. So might be, if you're a holder of the stock, you sell these options. I mean, this is a once in a year opportunity to sell some juice in this thing. Fade the putting myself up for sale routine.
Is that the?
Yeah, what about earnings coming up though? They don't want to be worried about that. I mean, see that.
Well, there's earnings coming up, but once they try to put themselves on the block, doesn't it tend to damp the earnings effect? I mean, not that it's totally gone. But
earnings become a wee bit moot at that point when you're saying the company could be sold at any moment. That's kind of earnings are definitely a sideshow at that point.
Yeah. I mean, so the 60 vols is a pretty good level, but let's see what it does. But prior to earnings. I mean, every earnings cycle we've had, vol really has never gotten above 48, and it's trading for 58. It's one of these stocks that generated $4 a share in earnings a year. I mean, it actually is a pretty cheap stock. It's trading $21.80, so they had some hard times though recently. Well, maybe that's why.
There you go. This could be another option pit instructional candidate for how to prep for a potential takeover of a company. There you go. So keep an eye on this Irish drug manufacturer, aka Guinness, AKA.
It is Harp.
AKA Harp. Harp is definitely my preferred choice of the two, but WCRX.
Jameson's.
We'll keep an eye on WCRX here and see if any further developments occur here in this name that justify all of these crazy prints we're seeing in WCRX right now. But now, I think with that, we're going to close out the old odd block for today and roll right into the Express block.
The Express Block, brought to you by Options Express. Options Express lets you trade where and when you want for every level of trading. From advanced charting, free daily trading ideas, and free educational resources, Options Express is the online broker for all traders. Best of all, Options Express allows you to trade stocks, options, and futures all in a single account on powerful yet easy-to-use trading platforms, including mobile devices. Visit optionsexpress.com/OXradio for your free account. Options Express is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
All right, and welcome to the Old Express block. This is the portion of the show where I get to rest my vocal cords for a few minutes, and Mr. Grigas takes over the show. Mr. G, what is going on in the land of OX, sir?
Well, a lot of the calls that we get involve the integration of Schwab and OX, and when are you going to be fully integrated, and what new things have you come up with, and what does it mean to me? So recently we had an aspect of funding the accounts that is fairly important to dual clients, which is a Schwab client and OX client, that a lot of people have taken notice and started using. The old method to move money from Schwab to Options Express was through a wire. Obviously, we weren't charging any type of wire fees in between those two different broker dealers. But now we have something called the money move. You can instantly move money from your Schwab account to the Options Express account with absolutely no delay. So the press release, or at least the internal memo, stated that on April 17th, individual and joint account clients who have both an Options Express account and a Schwab brokerage account can use schwab.com or schwaballiance.com to transfer funds immediately between the two accounts. The transfer service uses a direct connection between Schwab and Options Express to move the transfer, to effect the transfer. Transfers entered before 8:45 p.m. Eastern will post real time. Transfers after 8:45 Eastern will post the following business day. Some of the eligible accounts on there would be valid account pairs that have the same owners, Schwab One accounts, Schwab General Brokerage, Options Express IRA, SEP, and Simples, and any other individual Options Express or joint accounts. Which is kind of neat, because if you see an opportunity now, at options, to trade options, and maybe you're not comfortable using the Schwab website, or they don't have the functionality that Options Express does, you can immediately move money over and be in that trade that you want to do, especially like around earnings time that we're in now. It really saves the time and headache for some of these people that are trying to get into some trades and want to do it quickly. One of the things you want to be wary of is that if you do move funds in, and I'm sure this has to do with some of the rules from September 11th, the Patriot Act, funds moved from Schwab to Options Express are not available for withdrawal for at least one business day. That's kind of like anything that has a one-day settlement, and they don't want people moving money around. And from my training, what they would call that is layering, and then they would move the money to somewhere else and wash it and get it out of here. I'm sure everyone's familiar with their compliance tests that they've had to take over the last 10 years since September 11th occurred. Other than that, we have some telephone conversations today regarding Facebook. It's starting to pop back into the mindset of the people that are interested in IPOs and social media. As I've talked before on the show, on our OX social area of the website, we have a market insight that's been posted up there for about 2 months now, trying to guess the price of what Facebook will be on its first trading day on its IPO. Right now they have it at about 91.70. People keep asking us, when is the IPO going to occur? And it's like a rumor mill. I mean, the latest date, what we've heard, is mid-May. So right now they're putting it at about May 17th. And then, later on in the day, I hear that it's not going to be until June. So I think they're looking for an opportunity to get the most they can for it. We'll obviously have it available to trade. We get this question a lot too, and you guys probably nice laugh at this, but we'll get accounts that have $500, $600, $700 in there, and they say, hey, I want to get on the IPO price. Well, guess what? We're not an investment dealer, and as you've seen all the other social media companies IPO in the last 12 months, it's most likely going to open up higher than what it IPOs for. But we've gone down that road before. But realize you will be able to buy it. It's usually within about an hour and a half on the IPO date in the secondary markets. And the biggest thing we tell people, and I think we restrict it now, is that don't place a market order unless you like looking at a debit account. So those are the two big things. I mean, what are you guys hearing on the Facebook IPO? Is that something that KYO has clients calling in about, or not at all?
Yeah, we've had a couple people. The people that are most concerned with the Facebook IPO are the ones that have positions in Zynga. If we get general calls about Facebook, it's usually, how do I participate in the IPO, which we're not part of the syndicate, so those calls are relatively quick. But the people that are calling about Facebook, I think, are interested only because they have positions in Zynga, and Zynga's been like hanging out near its lows here around 8.25. I think Zynga made a low around 7.97. So I think the longer the Facebook IPO takes, Zynga just kind of hangs out here near the lows. So the people calling in about Facebook are Zynga holders. That's been my observation.
Yeah, I look forward to the Facebook IPO so we can dive into all those fun questions again, like why did the underwriter screw them so much when the stock's going to gap up, of course, on the opening day, right after the opening print, and how much money are they going to leave on the table? B, how come I couldn't participate in that? How come I couldn't get into that? So we'll get into all sorts of fun discussions about selling downside puts at whatever approximate level you want to approximate your own Facebook IPO price at, just like we talked about last year with LinkedIn and all those other ones that kind of got this whole ball rolling. And then, of course, in this crazy frenzy after the IPO, I look forward to seeing how wacky that conversion reversal market gets. A lot of people like to. This one might be an exception because there's so much fervor for this one, but most of these other Web 2.0 IPOs, as soon as they've launched, people have been scrambling for ways to short them. So those conversion reversals have gotten kind of wonky and a bit out of control in some cases. So it might be interesting to watch how that downside put skew and how those conversion reversals play out in the opening weeks, particularly because in the opening week, all you have really is the stock until you can get the options in play a week or so later. So there's a lot of froth to be worked out there in those opening weeks. I look forward to diving into all those topics when Facebook finally does come out. Yeah, I've still been hearing mid-May, but maybe you've been hearing it's got pushed back to June, John. That's a new one for me. But whatever it is, we'll be talking about it ad nauseum until it finally does happen. Because look how many other IPOs have jumped out ahead of it just to kind of ride that bandwagon. It's just that rising tide is lifting all boats.
Pandora and Groupon, they're all falling back on their heels. I mean, they're Groupon's at $10, Pandora's 8.5. Ugh. What's going on? And
people might even be starting to question Facebook paying $1 billion. I mean, they're kind of just throwing cash around now, which makes you wonder if they have all this cash so readily accessible, why the F are they going public to begin with? Unless, of course, they obviously want to pay off those earlier stage investors. Of course, a lot of those people have already been paid off in the secondary markets. So if you want to get out of Facebook stock, you can get out of Facebook stock. That's not a hard thing. So it really makes you wonder why the heck they are going public if they already have capital to throw around and quote-unquote Facebook stock to throw around. Why are they, they paid $1 billion essentially in stock for not Zynga, but for Instagram, an app that has never made a penny to its name. So I actually heard...
they paid them with stock though, right?
Yeah, exactly, with stock before their public offering.
Well, they probably priced it right over whatever the offering price was.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But it's kind of funny that, they already have the capital to do these kind of things. They already have the shares are lying around to do these things. Why go the extra mile and go public and bring all the scrutiny that comes with that? I mean, Facebook's been able to fly.
You need to have the IPO for the funny money. You can't. It's like going to, let's just call it the dollhouse without the proper credit card with you. You need the IPO. You need to monetize that 100 PE. You got to do it. That's why they're doing it.
100 PE. I
heard the news
I
show says that the IPO hopeful date is May 17th.
Ooh.
Which I will lobby to become a federal holiday.
May 17th. Is that by expiration? Ooh, it is right around expiration.
They never do these things with the options market in mind, which really just makes me sad. That should really be their
it
first.
Makes it interesting, though, because I don't know if you want to do it on a strategy block, but I think for everybody who cannot take all their hard-earned money and buy Facebook on the IPO, how much do you think you're going to make on it? You could probably sell some fat little put spreads in ZYNGA, and ZYNGA will probably trade like 9.5, 10 going into this thing. And, maybe it catches a halo a day or two more. I would probably sell it the day before the IPO because that's when it'll be bid the most. And you'd probably make the same amount just selling put spreads in ZYNGA as you would, committing a bunch of dough to the Facebook IPO. And then you have a synthetic Facebook right there.
Synthetic ZYNGA, the synthetic Facebook.
Who says you don't do stuff on the option insider radio? There's your synthetic play for Facebook. You never even have to deal with it.
You definitely had a great synthetic going into earnings there. The juice, especially on that downside you're talking, those downside puts in ZYNGA were extremely, extremely attractive going into earnings. It's kind of come off, obviously, now post-earnings, even though Facebook, you got me saying it now, too. ZYNGA is off quite a bit since earnings as well. Some of that juice is starting to come back in a little bit, but still.
It is. I think it's all because of this level, and now that I think the upsides come back into ZYNGA. So if you can't, you can't buy Facebook. Most normal people can't buy Facebook, but ZYNGA will have that halo from Facebook. At least I think so, right?
Well, if you think that, you can do something silly like, a free May 7-10 risk reversal, and just pick up some free upside all day long and just do that for nothing or a nickel.
Yes. And at worst, you have ZYNGA at the 7 handle. And it performs, and what do you got? You've got a huge winner, and you don't even have to be long Facebook. You'll make more money on that play than you ever would buying Facebook. And you unwind it before Facebook even IPOs. Thank you very much. Option Insider Radio.
And we just threw out some very specific examples. That was for that one listener out there, and you know who you are, who wrote in recently requesting more specifics. There you go.
That's what we mean by doing stuff.
Exactly. That's what we mean by doing stuff. Sell downside put spreads in ZYNGA to approximate Facebook, or perhaps even leg into some beautiful bullish risk reversals and get them for free or very little outlay, and then ride that Facebook wave.
Ball edge.
Exactly.
Brilliance.
Exactly.
Brilliance, Mr. Longo.
There we go.
I love it.
There we go. All right. And with that, hijacking of the Express block.
Totally hijacked. Sorry.
That's quite all right.
Sorry about that, John.
I like how we brought it back to ZYNGA, though. That's good.
Yes. We kind of got off to the races there.
Listener email.
It's funny. Option Express is going to be deluged tomorrow with risk reversals in ZYNGA. And they'll say, hijack it some more.
Yes.
Hijack it some more.
Yes. They're going to call John specifically. How do I leg into this May 7-10 risk reversal?
What is this risk reversal thing? Is that a put spread? What do I do here, John?
Yeah, if these rumors are true, the May might be too soon. You might have to roll out to June or something.
Yeah, you might have to do. I think you do June just to be safe.
Yeah. So then looks like June. You can still do it for a nickel, maybe a dime at the worst if you're really bad at legging it. But other than that, yeah, not a bad little flyer to take if you're thinking this Facebook train is going to lift all of these other little babies floating around.
Because I watch it how it acts on Renren too, that Chinese Facebook thing. And it has a similar effect. Like right now, they're all kind of dead. It's very much like they all were prior to Facebook saying they were going to IPO. They were all kind of dead. Vol's kind of sitting at a strange level. Now, okay, we just need them to start painting the tape again with.
All right, and with that, we're going to close out this extended Express Block segment, and now we're going to dive right into Around the Block.
Around the Block.
All right, and welcome to Around the Block. This is, of course, a portion of the show where we discuss what's coming up on our horizons for the next few trading sessions. And like we said today, not exactly a lot to look forward to the rest of this week. Andrew, what are you watching on your own trading screens there?
Really, I'm watching the TLT mostly in how it reacts to the European thing. If that actually can break down and real interest rates start happening again, I think that's much better for equity. So just really TLT interplay with volatility, and and this natural gas thing seems to be a little off to the races on this buyout today, but I'm not quite sure that this could be the bounce off the bottom that I've been looking for. But those are those are the big, besides Denny's, the Denny's earnings tonight and my chance at eggs over my hammy for a credit.
Oh, yes.
That is it.
We'll need to give the listeners the update on Denny's before we go. But before you go, Andrew, what is coming up in the land of the pit that may intrigue our listeners?
Big. We have our weekly seminars. We'll have another one now the middle of May, teaching people how the weeklies work. May and June. So we had the beginner one. It's free. You can go to the website, pull it. We'll have intermediate in 2 weeks, and then in the middle of June. And then we have our big June event. Come meet Mark Sebastian and Andrew Giovinazzi in Chicago. We will be mock trading. We will be teaching people how to trade. We will be drinking old style on top of a roof and watching Cubs games. So that is, it will be a good time to get to know us, get to meet us, and and see how we think about options, which might scare you or might not, but nonetheless, we will be there in the flesh.
A vintage Chicago afternoon on the old rooftop, drinking old style, watching the Cubs.
I love those afternoons. Can't get any, and with a telescope, of course.
Yes,
because you have to look into the stands on a hot day.
Yes, you do. All right. We'll leave that up to the imaginations of the listeners. And Andrew, thank you, sir. And, of course, giving our listeners that much requested update here on Denny's earnings. They are lighting up the tape as we speak. Denny's closed at $4.14, up a penny today. And now in the after hours, they're trading $4.06. So down about 8 cents. Denny's just printing money. If ever there was an argument for some sort of options book after hours for retail to trade, this was it. I'm looking at the Denny's options today. They traded a 4-lot of the May 5 calls going into the earnings today. So a lot of activity lighting up the tape in DENN. Speaking of activity and things to watch, Mr. Grigas, what have you been watching over there in the land of OX? Or what should I say, what are you watching for the next few sessions here?
Well, we got the non-farm payroll on Friday. Again, that's up on our market insights question. People are pretty down since the last one didn't come in line, so they're looking for payrolls of less than 120. So watching that one for Friday. What we've been working on here the last couple of days also is this. We got the SIBO Options Institute 2-day live Chicago workshop. The big Tim Navabi and I have been kind of reaching out to people in Chicago. We're putting together an advisory board, but that kind of goes along with the SIBO event. But if you are interested in the event, you can still sign up for that. It is a 2-day event. It's usually $1,750. I believe Schwab is subsidizing it, so I think it's a special rate of $800. So give us a call if you have any questions on that. So we have that coming up next week, and non-farm on Friday should keep my calendar busy.
Good old non-farms coming in early, bright and bleary-eyed with some coffee to watch the old non-farms. Of course, I think non-farms probably doesn't shake your world the way it used to back in the day.
No, not when I was trading futures for myself at a prop firm.
No.
Called Refco. But no, it does light up our phones though. I mean, we do get a lot of people trading it right around that number, and then once it settles down, it's pretty much to the equity open.
And Mr. FHM, what are you watching for the next few sessions now that Apple and Ford are pretty much in the bank? What else is catching your eye? Any wheel of fun candidates, or should I say triple income strategy candidates that are catching your eye these days?
Well, the wheel of fun is more the high vol stocks that don't necessarily pay a dividend. The ones I've been watching there are ZYNGA, and we've been keeping our eye on Freeport-McMoRan, the copper gold mining company. That one's been doing all right. It chops around a little bit, and we like selling puts on it. Take it, sell some calls against it once we get assigned. FIO, Fusion IO, is still a stock that's makes some pretty big moves. You get some nice juice, nice premiums. It was down $2 today.
Yeah, you've been talking about this one for a while. You guys still pretty active in this one?
Pretty active for us is, it's on the list, and we'll look out 2 months and sell 10 puts for a couple people here and there. So for us to be fairly active, we're just looking for higher volatility stocks that have a good story and a good fundamental baseline. So this one fits that mold fairly well. And then I am looking forward to being down in New Orleans this weekend for the Options Industry Conference with Mr. Longo himself in the flesh. I think we're going to be recording a couple shows down there, as well as talking to the audience of options professionals. So it should be a very educational weekend.
Yes, it should be a fun week. And for those of you not in the old options biz, this is the week of the big options industry conference, the OIC conference, coming up in New Orleans this week. And I will be heading down there, as will good old FHM. And we will be doing quite a bit of Options Insider Radio programming from the show, as we always do. And if you can't make the show, don't worry. We also record all of the panel sessions and put them out via theoptionsinsider.com and our iTunes feeds and our Options Insider Radio Network feed. So you can find those in a variety of places if you want to check out the panels but can't make it to New Orleans. And as Uncle Mike said, we will also be recording some episodes of the Advisor's Option down there, he and I, as well as holding a very interesting, or what we hope will be an interesting panel on advisors and why they do or perhaps do not use options in their practices. So a lot of fun stuff coming up in New Orleans this week. So listeners to this show can stay tuned to theoptionsinsider.com and our iTunes feeds, and we should have that content out for you over the next few weeks. It's really up to the OIC and when they want us to start putting it out. But it should start rolling out over the next few weeks so you can get a good taste of what was going on this coming week here in New Orleans at the Options Industry Conference. And that, of course, is going to do it for this episode of the Option Block. I want to thank all of my cohorts, my partners in crime, for joining me on the show today. We, of course, want to thank all of you out there for downloading and streaming and subscribing to this program and making it such a success. And we'll see you next time right here on the Option Block.
Become a part of the Option Block. Just visit www.theoptionsinsider.com/forum to post a question for the hosts. You can also submit questions to twitter.com/optionblock or leave a voicemail at 312-544-9356. Make it interesting and your question just might make it on the air. The Options Block is property of the Options Insider Incorporated. All rights reserved. The preceding program was a presentation of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com/radio or search for Options Insider Radio in iTunes.